Hello friends, this is the second part of our discussion on O. Henry's short story, The Gift of the Magi. Friends, today we are going to read, critically analyze and appreciate this short story. So let's start and happy learning. $1.87. That was all. And 60 cents of it was in pennies. Pennies saved one and two at a time by bulldozing the grocer and the vegetable man and the butcher until one sticks burned with the silent imputation of parsimony that such close dealing implied. 3 times Della counted it, $1.87. And the next day would be Christmas. There was clearly nothing to do but flop down on the shabby little couch and howl. So Della did it, which instigates the moral reflection that life is made up of sobs, sniffles, and smiles, with sniffles predominating. While the mistress of the home is gradually subsiding from the first stage to the second, take a look at the home. A furnished flat at $8 per week. It did not exactly beggar description, but it certainly had that word on the lookout for the mendicancy squad. Now, friends, here, this is the beginning of the story. The story begins on Christmas Eve with Della lamenting the fact that she has only saved $1.87. Despite months of pinching pennies at the grocer, butcher, and vegetable man, she flops down on their shabby couch and she cries, while the narrator goes on to introduce the young couple, Della and Jim Dillingham Young. See the second part. In the vestibule below was a letter box into which no letter would go, and an electric button from which no mortal finger could coax a ring. Vestibule here, that means a large entry gate, okay, entrance of the building. And here the writer describes that an electric button from which no mortal finger could coax a ring. That means here it means that the couple doesn't have many friends. Also appertaining thereunto was a card bearing the name Mr. James Dillingham Young. The Dillingham had been flung to the breeze during a former period of prosperity when its possessor was being paid $30 per week. Now, when the income was shrunk to $20, the letters of Dillingham looked blurred, as though they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unassuming letter D. But whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and reached his flat above he was called Jim and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham Young, already introduced to you as Della, which is all very good. So this is how the writer O. Henry goes on to introduce the young couple Della and Jim Dillingham Young. The narrator then describes their apartment, remarking upon its cheapness, $8 a week, and lack of a working doorbell. Friends, this first section of the story focuses on how little the Dillingham Youngs have of external or material value. Della has saved only $1.87 after months of effort, and the apartment they live in is shabby and broken. There is nothing beautiful in their life at first glance. Now, let's move ahead. Della finished her cry and attended to her cheeks with the powder rag. She stood by the window and looked out dully at a grey cat walking a grey fence in a grey backyard. Now, friends, see this phrase: a grey cat walking a grey fence in a grey backyard. So now the common color is grey. That means that cat is not visible if it has, a grey background, right? So this is how she looks. See, Della. Della is beautiful, but right now she looks dull. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she had only $1.87 with which to buy Jim a present. She had been saving every penny she could for months with this result. $20 a week doesn't go far. Expenses had been greater than she had calculated. They always are. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim. Her Jim. Many a happy hour she had spent planning for something nice for him. Something fine and rare and sterling. Something just a little bit near to being worthy of the honor of being owned by Jim. Friends, here Della stops crying, but is still at a loss for how she might buy a Christmas present worthy of Jim. Because here Della and Jim loved each other very dearly. Mirror between the windows of the apartment and stands before the glass, releasing her hair to fall to its full length. Windows of the room. A very thin and very agile person may, by observing his reflection in a rapid sequence of longitudinal strips, obtain a fairly accurate conception of his looks. Della, being slender, had mastered the art. Suddenly she whirled from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face had lost its color within 20 seconds. Rapidly she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its full length. Now, there were two positions of the James Dillingham Youngs in which they both took a mighty pride. I repeat, there were two positions of the James Dillingham Youngs in which they both took a mighty pride. One was Jim's gold watch that had been his father's and his grandfather's. The other was Della's hair. Had the Queen of Sheba lived in the flat across the ash shaft, Dela would have let her hair hang out the window someday to dry, just to depreciate her Majesty's jewels and gifts. While had King Solomon been the janitor, with all his treasures piled up in the basement, Jim would have pulled out his watch every time he passed, just to see him pluck at his beard from envy. See, very interesting. Here, friends, the narrator describes the couple's most prized possessions. Dela's long brown hair that falls below her knees and Jim's gold watch that was passed down from his grandfather, that he inherited from his forefathers. He compares these items to King Solomon's treasures and the Queen of Sheba's jewels. This is very interesting comparison made by the writer. Now friends, here the writer means the narrator shows that value is subjective when he compares Dela's hair and Jim's watch to the treasures of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. These items are clearly not equally valuable, but to Dela and Jim, their prized possessions mean just as much as the mythical jewels the narrator alludes to. Okay, so we have allusion. Queen of Sheba and King of Solomon. So it's a kind of exaggeration, you know. Dela also demonstrates that her main concern with their poverty revolves around how it limits her ability to show her love for Jim. Also note that Dela's hair here represents her own external beauty and youth. Let's move ahead. So now Dela's beautiful hair fell about her, rippling and shining like a cascade of brown waters. Isn't it interesting? Yes. It reached below her knee and made itself almost a garment for her. Here cascade means, you know, a waterfall. Okay, so I repeat. Let's read once again. So now Dela's beautiful hair fell about her, rippling and shining like a cascade of brown waters. It reached below her knee and made itself almost a garment for her. And then she did it up again nervously and quickly. Once she faltered for a minute and stood still while a tear or two splashed on the worn red carpet. Now, see, she was crying. On went her old brown jacket. On went her old brown hat. With a whirl of skirts and with a brilliant sparkle still in her eyes, she fluttered out the door and down the stairs to the street, wearing her old brown jacket and old brown hat. Now she is on the road down the street. Where she stopped, the sign read, Madame Safroni, hair goods of all kinds. One flight up Dela ran and collected herself, panting, breathless situation because she was hurriedly coming to that place and also entered the shop of Madame Saffron. Madam, large, too wide, chilly, hardly looked the Saffroni. Friends, here Della runs downstairs onto the street where she finds a hair shop run by Madame Saffroni. After a brief exchange during which Madame Saffroni evaluates Della's hair, Della sells her long locks for $20. Let's see further. Okay, now Della asks, "Will you buy my hair?" Now Madam replied, "I buy hair. Take your hat off and let's have a slide at the looks of it." Down rippled the brown cascade. $20, said Madam, lifting the mass with a practiced hand. See the quick reply of Della. "Give it to me quick." Oh, and the next 2 hours tripped by on rosy wings. Forget the hashed metaphor. She was ransacking the stores for Jim's present. She found it at last. Now see, friends, Della was hunting for something, from shop to shop. She was in search of a nice present for her dear husband, okay, Jim. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. Now she got it. See, she found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. There was no other like it in any of the stores, and she had turned all of them inside out. It was a platinum fob chain, simple and chaste in design, properly proclaiming its value by substance alone and not by meretricious ornamentation, as all good things should do. It was even worthy of the watch. The watch, see, T capital, W capital. The watch of Jim. As soon as she saw it, she knew that it must be Jim's. It was like him. Quietness and value. The description applied to both. $21 they took from her for it, and she hurried home with the 87 cents. Friends, here in this part, Madame Saffroni's cold evaluation of the dollar value of Della's hair directly contrasts with its value to Della and Jim. To Madame Saffroni, it is worth no more than the money she can get for it. See, I repeat. To Madame Saffroni, it's worth no more than the money she can get for it. To them, it is worth so much more than that. To them means whom? Della and Jim. Della demonstrates her love for Jim by sacrificing her own most prized possession and external beauty without a second thought. Della spends the next 2 hours looking for a perfect present for Jim. Friends, Della decides finally on a simple platinum chain for Jim's watch, comparing the watch, comparing the lack of watch of ornamentation and value to Jim's personality, which is equally quiet and valuable. Here, quiet, Q-U-I-E-T. Quietness means peaceful, P-E-A-C-E-F-U-L. So, friends, the substance of watch is more important to Dela than its lack of ornamentation. Just as Jim's inner worth means more than his salary or quiet manner. Now, Dela returns home to fix her hair into curls and prepare dinner before waiting for Jim at the door. Now, here she comes back with 87 cents, and now she has a beautiful present for Jim, for her husband Jim. Now Dela is happy, okay, because she has got it. She has got the Christmas present, which is, according to Dela, worthy, and you know, it is precious one for Jim, because Jim values his watch. You know, Jim is happy because he is possessing this valuable watch. Now, why valuable watch? Because see, not its price of watch, but the way he inherited it. Okay, so he takes mighty pride on this possession, his gold watch, which he inherited from his forefathers. So here, let us read. Okay, with that chain on his watch, Jim might be properly anxious about the time in any company. Grand as the watch was, he sometimes looked at it on the sly on account of the old leather strap that he used in place of a chain. When Dela reached home, her intoxication gave way a little to prudence and reason. You know, friends, Dela was passionate to buy a Christmas gift for her dear husband. So out of that passion, out of that fever, she got her hair cut off, and now she looked as a school-going boy with short hair, not that much beautiful, okay. So here, yes, she got out her curling irons and lighted the gas and went to work repairing the ravages made by generosity added to love, which is always a tremendous task. Dear friends, a mammoth task. See, the writers. Here, the writer tells us that it is a mammoth task. It is a huge task. Which one? To repair the ravages. Okay, and that is with love. Within 40 minutes, her head was covered with tiny, close-lying curls that made her look wonderfully like a truant schoolboy. She looked at her reflection in the mirror long, carefully, and critically. She said to herself, If Jim doesn't kill me before he takes a second look at me, he'll say I look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.87? Here, let's move ahead. At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made and the frying pan was on the back of the stove hot and ready to cook the chops. Jim was never late. Della doubled the fob chain in her hand and sat on the corner of the table near the door that he always entered. Then she heard his step on the stairway down on the first flight, and she turned white for just a moment. She had a habit for saying little silent prayers about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please God, make him think I'm still pretty." The door opened and Jim stepped in and closed it. He looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow, he was only 22 and to be burdened with a family. He needed a new overcoat and he was without gloves. Jim stopped inside the door, as immovable as a satyr at the scent of quail. His eyes were fixed upon Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not read, and it terrified her. It was not anger, nor surprise, nor disapproval, nor horror, nor any of the sentiments that she had been prepared for. He simply stared at her fixed with that peculiar expression on his face. Now, friend, this is climax, right? When Jim enters the door, he freezes, staring at Della's hair without expression. The writer beautifully narrates the appearance of Jim. Della runs to Jim and tells him that she had her hair cut and sold it in order to buy him a Christmas present. Friends, here, see, everything Della does is out of love for Jim. Here, she worries for a moment that her sacrifice of external beauty will affect how Jim feels towards her, or that Jim will not have wanted her to make the sacrifice. Right? Now, see, what is the reaction of Jim when he looks at Della? There is no such expression as anger or surprise or disapproval. Not any kind of the sentiments, right, that Della had been prepared for. He is just gazing at Della without any expression on his face. Della wrinkled off the table and went for him. "Jim, darling," she cried. "Jim, darling, don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold it because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It will grow out again. You won't mind, will you? I just had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Say Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I have got for you. Now see the reply of Jim. You have cut off your hair? Laboriously, as if he had not arrived at the patent fact yet, even after the hardest mental labor, Jim asked, You have cut off your hair? Cut it off and solve it, Della said. Don't you like me just as well, anyhow? I'm me without my hair, ain't I? See, friends, when Jim enters the door, Jim freezes, staring at Della's hair without expression. Okay. Then Della runs to him and tells him that she had her hair cut and sold it in order to buy him a Christmas present, a Christmas gift. Jim continues to stare and Della repeats that her hair is gone, but that her hair for him is immeasurable. Jim finally moves, giving Della a hug and throwing a package on the table. See, we are looking that part later, but here, both Jim and Della express their love for each other. Jim here says, see, let us move further. Jim looked about the room curiously. You say your hair is gone? With an air almost of idiocy, Jim asked, You say your hair is gone? Della replied, You needn't look for it. It is sold, I tell you. Sold and gone too. It is Christmas Eve, boy. Be good to me, for it went for you. Maybe the hairs of my head were numbered, she went on with sudden serious sweetness. But nobody could ever count my love for you. Shall I put the chops on, Jim? Out of his trance, Jim seemed quickly to wake. He unfolded his Della. For 10 seconds, let us regard with discreet scrutiny some inconsequential object in the other direction. $8 a week or $1 million a year. What is the difference? A mathematician or a wit would give you the wrong answer. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. This dark assertion will be illuminated later on. Now, here, further we'll have surprising end of this story, right? Something more than what the Magi in biblical story brought for baby Jesus. Okay, let us see. Jim drew a package from his overcoat pocket and threw it upon the table. Don't make any mistake, Dal, about me. I don't think there's anything in the way of a haircut or a shave or a shampoo that could make me like my girl any less. But if you'll unwrap that package, you may see why you had me going a while at first. White fingers and nimble toe at the string and paper. I repeat, white fingers of Dela, white fingers and nimble tore at the string and string and paper of that gift of that packet. And then an ecstatic scream of joy. And then, alas, a quick feminine change to hysterical tears and wails, necessitating the immediate employment of all the comforting powers of the Lord of the Flat. Lord of the Flat, yeah? Who? Jim. Okay, James Dillingham Young. For there lay the combs. See, this is why she gives scream of joy. She is overjoyed by seeing this. See, what she? So, see, in the package, there lay the combs, the set of combs, side and back, that Dela had worshipped long in a Broadway window. Beautiful combs, pure tortoise shell with jeweled rims, just the shade to wear in the beautiful vanished hair. They were expensive combs, she knew, and her heart had simply craved and yearned over them without the least hope of possession. Why, friends? Because, it was her wish to possess such combs. Okay, and she looked those combs on, over that Broadway window on that shop, but the combs were expensive, so she could not buy it, right? That was her dream to possess it, but she couldn't buy. Why? Because their income was very low. Because she could not afford to buy those combs, but now she has these combs, right? Now she is the owner of these combs, these expensive combs. And see, and now they were hers, but the dresses that should have adorned the coveted adornment were gone. So now the combs are useless because the hair of Dela has gone. Friends, here both Jim and Dela express their love for each other, right? First of all, we see that Jim, finally moves, giving Dela a hug and throwing a package on the table. Jim reassures her that no haircut could make him like her any less, but that he was shocked because of the present he bought for her. Dela opens the package to find the beautiful tortoise shell combs that she had coveted for her hair. She, gives scream of joy. And the very next moment, she is upset, And Jim comforts her before she remembers her own present to Jim. She pulls out the watch chain and asks to see Jim's watch so that she might try the chain on it. But before that, see, the combs are beautiful and expensive on the outside, but with Dela's hair gone, their external value is diminished. However, they still have the same sentimental value. Coming from whom? Coming from Jim. Now see further. But Dela hugged them to her bosom, and at length she was able to look up with dim eyes and a smile and say, "My hair grows so fast, Jim. My hair grows so fast, Jim." And then Dela leaped up like a little singed cat and cried, "Oh, oh." Jim had not yet seen his beautiful present. She had it out to him eagerly upon her open palm. The dull precious metal seemed to flash with a reflection of her bright and ardent spirit. "Isn't it a dandy, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You will have to look at the time 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks on it." Instead of obeying, Jim tumbled down on the couch and put his hands under the back of his head and smiled. "Dell, let us put our Christmas presents away and keep them a while. They are too nice to use just at present. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs. And now suppose you put the chops on." See? Very interesting, surprising end of the story. Jim flops down on the and smiles, saying that they should put their presents away for now and that they are so nice that they cannot use at that time, right? They are too nice to use just yet. Before admitting that he sold the watch to buy the combs for Dela. They decide to have dinner, and the narrator sums up the story with a little paragraph on the Magi. See, the narrator describes them as wise men who invented the art of giving Christmas presents, and the narrator compares Jim and Dela to the Magi, saying that of all who give gifts, these two are the wisest. See, it is here in this part we see, friends, it is revealed that Jim made his own similar sacrifice in order to buy the combs for Dela. The narrator's paragraph on the Magi, see here, let us read it. The Magi, as you know, were wise men, wonderfully wise men, who brought gifts to the babe in the manger. Now here the narrator talks about the first Christmas, okay? The birth of baby Jesus, and three wise men came with gifts, right? So this is the reference of biblical story. Okay, I repeat. The Magi, as you know, the Magi were wise men, wonderfully wise men, who brought gifts to the babe. See here, B capital, right? So it is for Jesus Christ, the babe in the manger. In the manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas presents. Being wise, their gifts were no doubt wise ones, possibly bearing the privilege of exchange in case of duplication. And here I have lamely related to you the uneventful chronicle of two foolish children in a flat who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasures of their house. See, the Magi were the wise, right? But here the sacrifice made by Jim and Dela described as foolish act, right? Unwisely sacrifice, right? See. But in a last word, see, the narrator says further. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that of all who give gifts, these two were the wisest. Of all who give and receive gifts, such as they are wisest. You know the way Dela and Jim give and receive gifts. You know the way they sacrifice. They have sacrificed their valuable treasure of their house, on which they took mighty pride. You know, they are the wisest. Everywhere they are wisest. They are the Magi. Okay, the Magi are the three, three people. Okay, angels who brought gifts for baby Jesus. So friends, here, although the presence of Jim and Dela are useless, they have demonstrated through sacrifice what? Their great love for one another. Their great love for each other. They have, in effect, given each other the greatest affirmation they could of each other's love. So this is, great story. Thank you very much, friends. Now, for students, let me give you short questions. Okay, so this is your homework. Okay, try to answer these questions. I read them out loudly. See, why was Jim wearing a strange look when he returned and saw Dela? Second question. How does the author unfold the irony of Jim having bought the combs for Dela's hair, which is no more now? Third question. How does Dela tell Jim about the gift she bought for Jim? Fourth question. What did Jim say when he discovered both their errors, and how did he plan to forget it all? And the last short question is, What is the relevance of the title of the story? The gift of the Magi. What is the relevance of this, the title of the story, the gift of the Magi? Okay, now try your hands and do well. We shall discuss these questions, okay, in our next lecture. Thank you very much.